Hello, I'm Nick Knight, and this is my assistant, Britt.
Hi.
I want to talk to you about a light we've used for the story we did for Stern magazine. It's a slightly odd light in so much. It's a very old light, very conventional light. It's called a Robert Juliet, and it's a theatre spot by Robert Juliet. And it's an actual piece of kit is shoot. It's like a large black cannon, and it's very, very heavy. So, Brett, you want to just shed some light into using it?
Yeah, so it's a very big, heavy light. We use it on quite a large stand because the weight of it is enormous, so it needs a lot of support. Because it's so heavy, the slightest movement, and it creates a very sharp circle. So the direction of it and where it lands is actually very, very important because it essentially shapes your image. So when you're moving it, it has to be very slight movements to get it in the right position. But this is harder said than done because of the weight of it. So it takes an assistant sort of climbing on top of the stand.
Yeah, terrifying all the time.
We put it in various places. We put it in woods. We've put it up on balconies.
Yeah, we've used it a lot in different places. And it is, I mean, you can't stress enough, this isn't an easy piece of material to use.
No.
As Britt says, it's on a large wind-up tripod. So it can go up to, what 12 foot in the air?
Yeah.
And then the assistant normally has to sort of climb up that tripod and adjust it. It's got a couple of condensers in it, so what a theatre spotlight does is, I'm sure you know, it throws a circle of light, a very well-defined, very sharp circle of light into the image. And if that circle of light, as Britt said, you know, if you just move it slightly, the circle will move a lot. So you have to keep it very still, and it's very, very precise. But it is a clunky piece of machinery to use.
And I think also something to mention is because it's a very hard, sharp light, often we try and take it a lot higher than the model. So if we're looking, we never want to underlight her. So often it has to go a little bit higher, which then means you take it higher and then you have to put it at quite a sharp angle as well. So then you have a lot of weight sort of pointing down towards a set, which is always done safely, but always slightly worrying.
It's difficult and dangerous, and it's one of those pieces of kit that I often sort of think there must be something better than this because this is so clunky, but I haven't found a light yet that's better. It gives such, I mean, aesthetically the reason I like it is because it gives such a sharp light. So the shadows are very deep, very black, and the light on you is very bright. So it's a real contrast light. It's a bit like having the sun in the studio. So it gives you real bright condensed light. So it's very good for picking out material, you know, the texture of a cloth, or picking out, sort of differentiating people from the background. We've used it in different ways in this shoot. The first image here you see is of the model Giselle, and we put her behind a column of water, basically put a large vase of water, and then put the spotlight straight on her, which abstracts her face because of the curvature of the glass. But also the light going through it makes it very, very sharp. If it was a softer light going onto there, that image of her behind the vase would be much less defined, be much more sort of blurry and nebulous. The sharpness of it is what makes it great.
Yeah, and what's really beautiful is obviously she had her makeup done by the lovely Lisa Eldridge, and her shoes and the fashion in it, and there's a lot of elements to it. And I think if you didn't have the vase, it would become quite a simpler fashion image, but putting the vase in distorts it. But using this particular light means we're able to pick up on all these different elements as well, which made it the right light for the shot.
Yeah, and also the thing about it is it brings in this circle of light, which actually is something that's quite nice. We're all used to working in squares and rectangles, and a circle isn't the shape we're used to working in because, you know, magazine pages or photographs tend to be in sort of squared formats. So introducing a circle as an aesthetic or a dynamic within the shot is very interesting. Of course, this isn't just a plain cutout circle, because when it lands across a surface, it shears and it bends and it moves around and it breaks. So you actually have a very interesting shape within the picture itself with which you wrap the model around. The next picture, which again is using the Robert Juliet theatre spot, this was a shot taken in daylight. So most of the light's coming from the daylight in the studio, which is the same we have here. And then I've used the spotlight in here to really just cut through that and to give some definition. You can see on the girl on the far right-hand side of the picture, her shape is very much defined by the sharpness of that light.
And I think from what I remember from the shoot as well, as opposed to the first picture, which was the light was coming directly from the front onto the model, this time the light's coming directly from a 90 degrees angle from the side. And I remember when we're working with it, If you move the light slightly forward to the front, that light lights up her whole face. And if you move it slightly further back, then you miss her very slim space of her arm. So it's getting that light in just in the right position, so that it's lighting the right part of her. And as in this image, you're lighting just that front of her face and just her arm there. And just moving it ever so slightly then completely changes the image.
Yeah, it creates shapes where you didn't see shapes before. It's just the strange thing about the spotlight is it actually brings such an intense light in it. It's almost like you're redrawing the whole of the body with this light. It's a very, very sharp, very intense and very condensed light. And you can focus it. I mean, actually in the model we use, the focus isn't particularly good, but some you can focus, so you can throw this super sharp circular light into a much more diffused circular light. The other little thing, which is just a nice addition to it, is on the edge of the circle, you have a blue line. So the white circle ends in a nice sort of, almost like a rainbow-like blue line, which is called the aberration of the lens at the edges, which is just kind of very pretty and very nice. And you want to look at the last shot, Brett. So this you can see the circle part of it again, but also we've used it and we've softened it down there, so you get the light coming through the tracing paper has softened it onto Giselle's back. So although it's very sharp, it actually feels quite sort of smooth and quite glossy. It's not too aggressive.
Yeah.
And it gives this image a more sort of religious feel to it, which is what I was sort of hoping to find.
And as you can see, you can kind of see on the image that we've softened the focus around the spotlight, and then you can kind of see that the light touches the tinfoil and then slowly fades off into the background, because it's a much softer image. You can tell by kind of the clothes and the hair, and it's quite nice how it touches the tinfoil and then fades off into black into the background, which is sort of picking up on the nice parts of it.
So that's the Robert Juliet. As I said, it's very heavy, it's very hot, it's very old, it's very clunky and difficult to move, but it is worth trying things out with it, because you do get this sort of incredibly focused beam of light, which will allow you to study shape and form and movement in a way that perhaps some other light's a bit more diffuse and you don't really see that. So if you're using an umbrella and a softbox, or if you're using a ring flash, those lights, you can't see the quality of the light so well. What's very interesting about using the Robert Juliet is you actually see how the light is carving the shape. So it's a good light to use.
I think what's nice about seeing how you use it and letting us work with it is, I think a lot of photographers end up using maybe like 10 or 20 lights just to create this one lighting fill at the end of a shoot. And then but just using one light, you can see by very gentle movements can completely change the shadows you get, completely change the mood of the shot. And the Robert Juliet's quite good because it gives you an instant result of every time you move it. And I think that's quite useful to see how light moves and the effects it can have on your image.
Yeah. I think it's very important to just realise you don't need so many lights to make something look really great. And actually, to be honest, I would work much more in the other way. I think if you can do it with one light, you should. You're really trying to, what you're doing is you're saying something by what you're showing. So if you're showing just what you want to see, just the most minimal thing, then you're really speaking in a much more pure way. So don't overlight things. In my opinion, don't overlight things. And don't worry about the shadows and the contrast of it. Indulge yourself in them and enjoy them.